Hi Zilla, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just enjoying this really beautiful primavera day in New York. Where do you live?
I live in Rockaway Beach, Queens,
Dude,
right
are
by
you
right by the ocean.
right by the ocean? That's amazing. So how far away
From the ocean?
from the ocean?
If I open the curtain, I could show you the ocean.
I want to see that at some point during this
Yeah.
interview, if you can do it. That would be amazing. So tell me, I remember for the people who don't know you completely, I mean, I'm honored to know you a tiny bit and have this relationship where we have been, making stuff together and
Oh, we've made
participate.
some fantastic stuff together. You are a great, phenomenal curator.
Oh, thank you. So, uh, you're not only a comedian. Tell us what you were doing before the pandemic.
Oh, my goodness. So, a month before the pandemic, I quit a job that I have for 10 years, which was being a New York City high school teacher. Of course, I had no clue there was going to be a global pandemic. I had quit to do more live performances a month before the pandemic hit. So I've had quite the emotional, artistic shock, but I think it's been a great experience. But yes, so I was a high school teacher, which, full disclosure, teachers do not get paid enough, and education is severely underfunded. I have to say that every time. And I know that from the inside. I'm not just a person who's gonna, say, of course, throw money at education, but it is severely underfunded in New York, especially. Um, but I loved being a teacher. And I think being a teacher really made me a better comedian because children are just fantastic to be around, and young people, I was a high school teacher, so young people, they have a great energy, and it's always lovely to spend a lot of time with people who may not be as hardened as adults are. So they have this very positive view of each other and the world, so that was always very joyful. But also, they will roast you because children are brutally honest. So it really helped build up my skin, um, to have the kids whenever they would get frustrated with me. I worked with students on the autism spectrum, and they also, some people with autism struggle with social cues. So they would just speak their mind. Like, okay, so my lipstick right now, one of my students would tell me, Miss, why do you put that red paint on your face? Like, because that, to him, that's what lipstick looks like. And it would always keep me very humble and like light, because it's like, yeah, why do I put this pink, like, why do I put this on my face? Who knows, Um, but uh, they, it was a weird, interesting thing. It like fed into, I taught film. I also taught English, writing, math. I like kind of bopped around for a little bit in the high school system. You can, and I just remember thinking every day that I needed to put more time to comedy, but I refused to be a bad teacher. So I knew that I would have to split off eventually, because teaching is literally not only just a full-time job. You have to answer the phone if a parent calls. You're looking out for the students. I mean, it ranges from, I've I've purchased socks for students that didn't have socks, and then on the same thing, I've recommended students to college. There's always something. So my plan before the pandemic was to take a break and do comedy full time. And instead, I took a break and spent a lot of time thinking about what my legacy was going to be as far as content. I love content. I think the internet can be a wonderful place. I think it can be an awful place. But I see so many people making wonderful things, and I kind of want in.
So you decided, this is very interesting because you decided to go from a really soul rewarding job, underpaid, to another soul rewarding job that I think is worse in terms of money.
Absolutely terrible. So being a teacher was very stressful, and it was very hard to create while I was teaching. I know there are people that can, so I'm not saying it's impossible. It just didn't work for me. I would do little bits, but I would never see a project fully through. Or it would be, I used to put up a bunch of post-its, so it would be a post-it on the wall, and then maybe a short story or something else. But I never really, pursued any projects all the way through. And comedy is one of the least rewarding things you can do. Financially, absolutely not rewarding.
No.
It's rewarding to bring people joy, and it's rewarding to. I really love when I can take something that is maybe difficult to talk about and talk about it with people. It reminds me a lot of teaching. So if I can talk about something political in a fun and approachable way, it reminds me so much of teaching. So there are parts that I enjoy equally, but the problem with comedy is that teaching. So every once in a while, I would meet a teacher that I used to say, people like that become teachers because they couldn't rule a small country. Because there are people who become teachers literally just to micromanage children, to make them obey them. And you've had one of these teachers, right? So I would see them and I would be upset, but I understood that that was the nature of what I did. But other than that, there was countless thoughtful, wonderful people who would do things like, I teach science, but I'm an artist too, so I'll have them paint something for the science project. We did these wonderful cross collaborations. Comedy, on the other hand, is so majority, not all, but is a large majority that think that they do comedy because they just want people to listen to whatever enters their minds. And sometimes that happens to be hateful or racist or sexist. So I literally went from a place that was about learning and constantly evolving. That's the reason why education is so hard, because every year something changes. You learn a new method of teaching. There's new technology. You have to keep growing and growing. And I entered a field where instead of constantly wanting to grow, the majority of those people would like to still say, like, well, my mother used to say, "De año de los huácara," like just some old school. Do you get what I mean? Like they're fighting for the bastion of you. I can say whatever I feel, and that is, I think, the most emotionally taxing. The no pay, is fine, because whenever I connect with someone, that's the pay. For now, but like tolerating. Even about my culture, I've heard people say things about women. I've heard people say things about Latinos. That what do I put myself in those situations. So that's the hard part.
Wow. Okay, so I want to talk about what happened during the year, or past year, but I'm getting interested into before becoming a teacher and a comedian. So, do you have siblings?
I have an older brother and an older sister. My brother is a New York City fireman. My sister is a gym teacher, and then I became a teacher. My parents drilled in us to work for the city. They get a pension. That they were very much about security and insurance. And I have an older brother and sister. They're 8 years older than me, though. And they were born in the, like, within very one after the other. So they're like twins. And so in many ways, I had an experience when I was younger that was like an only child. Because if you can imagine, when they were 16, I was 8. They wanted nothing to do with me. So I had a lot of alone time.
So you were the puntito.
Yes.
La niña.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes sense. Now I can imagine all this personality you have in front of everybody. Comes from there. So were you as a child, were you creative and imaginative and somehow a smaller version of the Zilla we have in front of the screen?
So my mother had my brother and sister when she was 16 and 17, and that drastically changed her parenting. So when she had me 8 years later, she was about 25, and she had the superstition that she could manifest the perfect child that she wanted. Or the like looking, not talking about personality. She loved my brother, sister, but she wanted a very specific kid. So she told me when I was really small that she would watch Shirley Temple movies and hope that I would be an entertainer, you know? And when I was, I was born little, a cutie pie. And my mother, like, steady diet of Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett. We used to watch El Chapulín Colorado. Like everything was fun, comedy, silly. I remember like in I Love Lucy, they would paint their teeth black, like one or two to look like, and we would do that, and she would dress me up for like Halloween. She would always do a lot. And um, I ended up turning to art in in middle school. So I became a visual artist, but she had me do the storytelling contest. So she still was kind of stuck on that. Like, I want you to perform. I see you on stage. This is also the woman that'll call me tomorrow and tell me I should run for president. Do you get what I mean? So like, you take what mommy says with a grain of salt. But I became a graphic artist. In high school, I went to I went to LaGuardia. So what that means in New York is that I went to like a magnet school. So it was everything. It was my regular studies, but in addition to a full day that included pottery. We would do pottery once a week. We would draw nude models. So it was an intensive, like I was really committed to being a visual artist. And then I took a photography class, and that inspired me to change my mind and go for film in college, which explains why I'm so eager and interested in the internet, because I think it is one of the things that makes film accessible to all. Because when I went to college was in the year 2000. And if you guys remember, in 2000, video cameras were god awful. They made the ugliest images that you could possibly imagine. YouTube had yet to exist, and then existed, towards the end there. So film was a thing that was classist. It was up here. You couldn't do it if you didn't have money, if you didn't have access. And it drove me wild, because all that time as a kid, I had been drawing and painting, and that costs money, but you could pick up a stick or chalk and get to work. But with film, you couldn't. We were shooting on actual film, 16 millimeter film. I would have to go to Kodak and buy it. And so I had a very bad experience in film school. Not very bad, but it wasn't as fruitful as I had hoped. Instead, it had made me put a financial ceiling over my ideas. So I didn't dream as big, because I would write stories that I could shoot with limited money. And that, I think, it kind of hindered my progress.
And that was the same. It was a similar ceiling for the other students in your class?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I was one of maybe 2 or 3 Latinx students in the school for film. And we bonded together. It was funny. That's what happens. You see each other and you want to help each other. And I'll give you an example, something I think of and laugh about all the time. You take screenwriting in film school. So I'm in a film school, or I'm in a screenwriting class, and there's a young man who has gentrified a neighborhood because he's coming to film school. He's wealthy, and he's reading his script out loud. And he goes, "Interior, small corner store, daytime." And I raise my hand and I go, "Interior bodega." And they laughed at me. They thought I had made up this word. And el otro día, They got bodega everything now. And like, but at the time, this is 21 years ago, that was devastating because my teacher literally said you don't put slang words in a script, right?
Dude, it's the staple of New York.
Yes. But 21 years ago, right? So I'm grateful that now, that's why I love the internet, because everything I couldn't do then. Oh my God, I got a green screen. You want me to write a story about somebody in Tahiti? I'll do it tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, you can do anything. And yes, I know it doesn't look the same. And film is still film, and that's still an upper echelon that we need to crack. There needs to be more Latinx representation in Hollywood, like yesterday. But yeah, film school was rough, you know. And then as soon as I got out, and I'll keep this brief, but as soon as I got out, I was interning. I was a film editor. That's what I had majored in, and I was like promptly just sexually harassed at work, and not in the like. I think people, when they think of sexual harassment, they think of like groping or things like that automatically, but it's much more layered than that. I was a trained film editor, and the producers would ask me to drop off dry cleaning, and then it kind of devolved from there. And then I did full on get sexually harassed, and I went to HR thinking that I would rebound, meaning like I was like, hey, I'm leaving because I'm I'm not going to deal with this environment. And what ended up happening is the person I was working for was so well connected that I didn't get a job offer for months, and so I started teaching.
Jeez. Wow. So you were obligated to switch. Wow.
And
I'm really trying to process all of this.
this is nobody asked me about this. This is lovely.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing these stories here because um, I think that many people forget how multidimensional we are, and then the difficulties. I mean, when you mix all these personal stories, right, with who you are now. I mean, I can see all these elements now that were just questions before, like, oh, she have a great sense of lighting and this. I don't know, like, yeah, so you study this thing, you know what you're doing, and now, as you said, internet and the pandemic, we can go back there, uh, can create this special moment for you to be sitting in your yellow orangey
My
seat.
chair.
Yeah, your chair. And Godzilla.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Somehow, uh, I don't know why you were telling me all these stories and school, college, and the harassment. And I was like, geez, this is fame.
This is what, so I went, my high school was the Fame High School. This is literally so dramatic. But you know what what's crazy is that I am more secure now than I have ever been in my entire life about what I'd like to make.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a road. You know, all of those things factor. You know, I will tell anyone, because sometimes I'm 39, so people are like, oh, do you ever worry that maybe you're coming to comedy, you know, at a later age, which they would never ask a man. But I would have been a terrible comedian at 22 because I didn't have a sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't have been able to really write in a way that, I think the number one thing people want from an or a thing that they may not know they want from a comic is like, you want to relate, but you also want them to talk about, you don't want them to just talk about everybody else.
Yeah.
They have to at least talk about themselves a little. And I don't think I would have ever been able to make fun of myself at all in my 20s.
Yeah, you need to understand the wounds.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have been able to make jokes about some of my failures because they were still too raw. But now, you know, look, man, you know, I get it. Getting an MFA just burn your money. You know what I mean? Like now I can say that and not actually cry because I have come to terms with that because I love the journey I've taken. Um, but it's like, I wouldn't change. I don't look backwards like that. You know what I mean? I don't think about the things I could have changed. I am so grateful though that phones now shoot better video than any of the cameras I held 21 years ago, because that means that a kid in Kenya, a kid in the projects, a kid in Oakland, someone in Venezuela can make a movie themselves. Like, that's so beautiful. That was not the case when I was in school and I suffered.
That was the promise of technology, right? And
Yes.
the internet too, like this equalization, to make everybody igual, and with the same access, which is, I think, is not completely true, because there's always a way to make you feel that you don't have that thing. It is always like that.
The one
But
thing I will say that's I like, because I think about this often. One thing I love, like you were saying, is the great equalizer. One thing I love is that the only things that really go viral on TikTok, I don't really love TikTok. I think I'm too old for TikTok. I don't say I'm too old for a lot of things, but I think I'm too old for TikTok. But the most popular things on TikTok are very homemade. Meaning, if you watch them, it's a person from the middle of nowhere or from a small town or from a city but doesn't have much, doing something very special, and that goes viral. And I know that's not how it all works, and corporations have kind of embedded themselves in that now. But at the start, I think there was some really lovely, I love that when someone goes viral and it's like, or you watch music from Brazil on TikTok. Like, that's wonderful. That's, I think, if we can punch up those parts of the internet, right? Diversity.
yeah, that would be great. but unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. That is the weirdest thing, because I remember the promise of the internet, and I was like, yeah, we will learn so much from other people. People will want to show the best of themselves, cultures, and dude, I can't even start enumerating all the weird things that happened today. Yeah, I feel a distance from TikTok, for example. I really don't understand. I wish I can. I mean, yeah, I have, but I can't participate. That's what I want to say. I can participate in it.
So the only reason that I got on TikTok was for work, a freelance gig that I had, promoting pro-choice and pro, like sex education, but in little tiny TikToks. And that has been really cool because it helped me kind of think in the way of like, what can I create that'll, my niece, I have two nieces, and I have the older one who doesn't, she's not into art, she's into sports, but she's always on TikTok. And what message can we create to kind of, yes, there's going to be 100 videos of kittens and, like, nachos and puppies, whatever is popular on TikTok, booties, and then if one of those is a small 30-second video explaining why you shouldn't have unprotected sex, which is the kind of things that we're working on. And that's been pretty cool. So I feel like as an education has also benefited from technology, because it's kind of like, if you wanted to teach my class a lesson, you could make a little video and you could join us virtually. There's beauty there.
Well, after a year, we just learned that it is absolutely possible. Difficult, but possible.
Incredibly difficult, yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to the teachers and parents this year.
Man, I don't understand why there's people still insisting that teachers are lazy or dude, they can't see what is happening behind the curtain. It's not even behind the curtain, it's in front of the curtain.
In front of the camera.
Yeah, in front of the camera. These people, dude. Okay, so pandemic, now we understand that everything flows to 2020 and you were there ready to take over streaming.
Well, no, the live stage at first, but then
But then,
streaming.
uh
Yes.
Max Headroom take over your life.
Absolutely. It became what's interesting about Zoom comedy is sometimes everyone keeps their mic off. So you'll see 15 faces, but you don't hear any laughter. So it is just you are like, it's the height of vanity. Cause you're like, I hope I'm really funny. So it was a test emotionally to get past that.
Does that affect the way you're telling stories or the jokes? I mean, I mean, obviously, there's no reaction, as you're saying now, from an audience, but because of that, you changed?
So I think I've strengthened in many ways a tolerance for. It's as a very good friend of mine, Petey Diabru, has once told me. He said, "So before I tell you what he told me, I will say this: I treat Zoom. Maybe it's the filmmaker in me, but I treat the Zoom shows. I know that a lot of people have been working via Zoom, so they don't want more of the same. So I treated it more like television than I think a lot of other people did. So the first time we did it was we did a Halloween show. There's this company on Twitch called Comedy Hub. They wanted to be the first 24-hour virtual comedy club, and they're slowly building their like internationally. So at any point in time you wanted to see some comedy, you could log in. And they reached out to me about doing a Halloween themed show. And I covered this in cobwebs. I had 3 costume changes. Like I treated it because I was so eager to be creative. And once they saw that, they were like, "Oh wait, you treat it differently." A lot of other people just talk. So would you like to do a show? And I started doing the show, and here's what you get used to. Here's how it's different, because you hear a lot of comics say it's nothing like real stage. It's not. I'm never going to tell you that it's like being in a warm room. That's what we call it, when everybody's laughing, everybody's got 1 or 2 drinks in them, and it's a great night, Friday night in a big city. Like I used to love performing in Boston. You get that vibe from people. That's a great electricity. That being said, you do a lot of time in quiet rooms when you do comedy. You do a lot of open mics. You do a lot of check spots, which means that when you're going up, they're talking during your set, closing out their bill. So what I saw it as an opportunity was to take Zoom and Twitch and to fill it in that space where I would be testing new material. And I started to get more political with my jokes because I could talk week to week. Every week I had to talk about a new topic. So I would talk about the current events. And that was really important to my growth. So it was different because it was like, yes, I don't hear the people laughing all the time, even though we get people in the Zoom who laugh. God bless them. I hope there's more of them. But it was almost like on a wavelength with like the strengths. There were different strengths that I didn't have doing comedy live, and there was different weaknesses, but I really loved the experience, and it helped me. The one thing about telling comedy, so taking it back to what my friend Petey said, with your original question, is that hard to do that with no laughter? He said, people don't like Zoom shows because there's no laughter, but they're pretending that they've never done a set in a room where the people don't feel like laughing. That has happened in real life, So what I feel like has happened is I gained a new strength, because if I played that room again, it wouldn't bother me as bad because I've been doing Zoom. So like you power through. It's different. It's harder to take risks though, because sometimes when you take a risk, you need to hear at least 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
There's always 1 or 2 people in the audience that are like, yes, keep going. You need that.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we are made as human beings for that kind of interaction, right? For the response from the other. We're made for communicating. So, okay. And let me try to. So, is Zilla Vodnas, the comedian, are you the same person when the camera is off?
Oh, absolutely. Not like as heightened. It's almost like a face and a face with makeup.
Got
So
it.
and I don't wear so much makeup where it's like, no prosthetics, no like, you know, it's the same, but just up, you know? And that's, I think, a new thing. Cause I think at first when I did comedy, I was very much just trying to make people laugh, which is still my ambition, one of my ambitions. But now I talk about things that I want to talk about. Before I used to be like, what do they want to hear? And I
Mhm.
felt like what ended up happening is it got very taxing for me emotionally to try to think what other people wanted, but also they can tell, like an audience can
Yeah.
tell when you're not being real with them, when you're
Yeah.
not, and you're not going to be their favorite. They might laugh at you, but they'll never love you because you didn't get honest, you didn't open up, you didn't,
Mhm.
connect. So now I'm much more able to connect, and with, I take now, because I put so much of my personality on the line now, going back to live, I've done a couple of live shows, you know, they've been very positive, but I know there's going to be a night where it won't be so, the audience response won't be so eager. And I'm hoping that I don't take it hard, because it's hard. It's difficult to not be like, they don't like me. It has nothing to do with that. You know
Well,
what I mean?
you can always go back to Zoom and stay in the comfort of your home,
Oh,
right?
no, I'm not leaving Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I'm not leaving Zoom. So I'm going to do the both. And the reason why is, so I used to work with students on the autism spectrum and people with disabilities, well, young adults with disabilities. That's what I got my master's degree in and I went back to school for that, and I taught. And someone messaged me to tell me that they were so grateful that they could see our show on Tuesdays, because they don't like interacting very much with people in the comedy club setting or in that type of packed setting. And I realized that Zoom is really wonderful because it affords access to anyone anywhere. It could be someone who's on a break from their job. It can be someone, not everyone is afforded the luxury to go to a club and pay for 2 drinks or go to a big city. So I love it. Like, the fans are different, but they are so honest, and they like, it I would get people who would come up to me after a show, but it's nothing compared to the notes or messages that people send me through Twitch or online. They're very, they'll tell me when I do something wrong. And they'll tell, it's a lovely, they don't heckle because I don't hear them when they're complaining. When I'm on Zoom, I don't hear them. But I love it. It's different. But it's definitely for me. So I'm not leaving Zoom.
That is interesting. It reminded me that more than 10 years ago, I was working at a cultural center, and they dropped on me the idea of bringing live music. Sounds stupid. They already have live music, but they wanted to bring like big acts. So then I tried to convince everybody, like, dude, perfect, but we need to do this thing at early day, like daylight. Why? People won't come. Yeah, all the people, all the 12-year-old, the 15-year-old people, they will come to see their band. The band they can't see at midnight, right?
Yes.
On a club. So I think creators often are so embedded into the circuits that they can see how beneficial can be, do things in a different way that can, make you closer to people who really need a different experience. Also, I think that you continuing on Zoom will open more doors, right, to different audiences that exist today. They're there waiting for your
Oh,
humor.
absolutely. And I think, it's a different angle for what I'll give you an example. It's very silly, but my online audience got very upset with me because on May 4th, I did not celebrate Star Wars Day. And it was a really, I have to say they messaged me. Some people were very angry. And I kind of like that. It feels very much like and once again, the internet can be an awful, awful place. Not denying that. But the audience that you can curate feels very much almost like a socialism. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, we didn't like that. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do that next time. I have no problem doing next year Star Wars Day. So there's a funny communication that happens online. People are looking for this gratification or this sense of connection. I can email you. You will read this email. And I like it. And it helps me become better because in many ways I'm still a teacher. And in that I want to learn new and different ways to connect with my class, my audience. If someone else has a good idea, I get bad ideas. People email me things all the time that I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But, like if someone shares, hey, I think you should do this, or I can help you with that, it's beautiful. It feels much more like a community because unfortunately, and it's something that we're going through very terribly right now, there is no comedy community.
What do you mean?
There is racially, there is a lot going on where there is recently there was an issue. There's been so many hate crimes against Asian Americans, Asian people, and recently there was a comedian who was not Asian, obviously, who said some incredibly demeaning and hurtful things, and that happens a lot in comedy because it's like, well, I think it's funny, so sometimes that the the way that like the way that some people are so like, no, I can speak my mind. They see comedy as a thing. And I don't care if it's hateful or sexist. This is why I became a comedian. It creates a splinter. It's very hard. I have friends in comedy, of course, but it's very divided, in the way. So film school prepped me for the classism and racism that I would encounter in comedy. It is like almost identical to the classism and racism I encountered in film school, because if you create something, say you're a Latinx comedian or you're a Black comedian, oftentimes you will get people who will tell you that you are niche.
Yeah.
And that is the same thing that happened in art school and film school, where it's like someone can, if your professor is enamored with pre-Columbian art, that's one thing. But if you only do Colombian art because you're Colombian, sometimes you'll get pushback in art school from that, So there's the same things happen in comedy. And that's been in cultural theft, just like in art school, cultural criticism. I remember distinctly in film school asking if we could screen more movies made by Black, brown, indigenous people. And I had a film history teacher who told me I would if those people made better movies.
Wow. Well, but those are stereotypes. And that is the difficult part today when we, you and me, we're trying to, defy that thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's an awful stereotype, but also, of course, because when your art form is based so much in financial access, and you keep that financial access away from international filmmakers, indigenous filmmakers, Black filmmakers. Yes, of course. And also that's not true. There's great Black filmmakers. They just pump out that idea. It reminds me of, and I love Martin, I love what he's done for film, but Martin Scorsese recently, he got into the news because he said something like, TikTok will never be film. And I understand what he means, but taking it back to what I said about phones being the first access, you see these fantastic, fantastic films made by indie filmmakers on their phone. Don't discount that there are people that finally, because of their phone, have access to film. you know?
I understand that, but also I understand him saying that, because it's not that he's intrinsically wrong. It's because, this is my opinion, there's something predefined about how certain art forms need to be, like opera. Oh, okay, opera is this thing, theater is this other thing, art is this thing, and then cinema is the newest long form that have some rules. So when you try to break them, it is complicated for people, right? For the creators, the producers, whoever is involved. And then we have the phones who are registering images, and but they're not exactly film in the way we're used to understand it. So breaking that barrier is not his job to do. He's enough all to just continue doing and thinking what he think this cinema is. It's for young people, as you said, to make that thing evolve. That's my
And,
impression.
and I no, and I agree with you. Meaning, like, yes, we have certain standards. Meaning, like, you see a lot of these movies or things. It's funny because Hollywood won't co-sign the phone, but they will make a whole movie where it looks like it's shot on a phone, real shaky. They'll take that aesthetic. But here's the thing that I challenge. I believe I agree in many ways with Scorsese. Stop, or rather than stop, let's do positive talk. Produce, help, assist, start programs, give those without access, teach them the ways of cinema. So instead of saying these people are not making cinema, say, and I would love, so for example, you look at something like The Irishman. The Irishman was a very expensive movie. You could have made The Irishman, my opinion or my impression, I love how you say it because it's so sensitive. I thought The Irishman was not worth the money. You could have made 7 indie films for the cost of The Irishman.
You could have done 50 Latin American indie films.
This is what I'm telling you. So instead of criticizing, maybe more, and that's something that I love to do. Like, one of my favorite things is sometimes I'll have a comic on the show, and the people, the Comedy Hub, will email me. They go, "You have such interesting choices," and we're always worried. And then this person, we don't even know their name, they go up and they just do such a great job, and that's because I have a forum. So it is my job to say, "Oh my God, you're really great. Come here. You have a couple minutes to be on the Zoom show. We're gonna broadcast to everybody." And so that's what I mean. It's one thing to criticize an art form. So I criticize comedy, but I'm also actively trying to curate and produce the type of comedy I'd like to see in the world. I could sit here and be like, I hate the way comedy's racist, and then never go out of my way to actually, I'm not saying that you can't make race jokes. I am just, and this is a feeling, I'm not in the majority, I'm in the minority. I feel like the best people to make fun of any race is a person from that race.
Absolutely.
So that's my whole thing. I will bring anyone up who is able to make jokes about themselves, their people. It's fine with me. I do not have any desire to support someone who is going to come on stage and make jokes at the expense of other races and not themselves. So, but in that way, like I said, with Martin Scorsese, like, I get it. And there is back to what you were saying, there is absolutely a format to cinema and there is to comedy. You know, I have people who say, "Can I get on the show?" And then they come on and we have a great time, but it's almost like just talking. And that is valid, but there is a difference. You know, there's talking, there's storytelling, there's comedy. There are different modalities, and you have to honor what the modality is in most cases. So you're right. Back to what you were saying about cinema, it's you know, you can take your phone, but you need to get your friend to be the cinematographer, and then you need your other friend to get the costumes. Now there's cinema.
Exactly. That is the thing.
It's a team effort.
Exactly. Why your show looks great compared with other people doing Zoom comedy? I mean, from my perspective and my sensibility, is because you are taking care of those aspects, this aesthetics, because you know you were prepared for that. You know, somebody new to the to broadcasting would start trying to figure it out how to get to this point. You know,
Absolutely. And I have an incredible, like, I have help. I have a friend who will tell me never wear that again on Zoom. I have,
too many lines.
yeah, like I have people, would be a lie to say that it was, a single endeavor. The people at the Comedy Hub have been incredibly, one of the things I love about them is that they saw the need for more diversity, and they're
Mhm.
always, encouraging that. And I have someone who helps me design flyers or things. But yeah, am I bringing this sense of I want everything to be aesthetically pleasing in some way, shape, or form. That is something I'm never going to get rid of from art school. So you know what I mean? Like I'm never going to um one of the things that I try to encourage people who perform on Zoom is at least to have light. Some Zooms are scary because it's just darkness and this person's shape, like
Like
they're
me now.
confess yeah, well, no, like they're on primer impacto, like confessing something, you know what I mean? Like they just look scary. So I try to encourage that in other people, and with varying results. I also take into account that not everyone has access to a corner with books, and so it ebbs and flows. But yeah, I never want someone may not understand me. It would be silly to think that everybody understood and liked my comedy, but I want them to at least be like, damn, she tried. Like, she's obviously trying. I didn't like it, but she's trying.
Mijita, I love you. Sí,
uh,
gracias, mamá. Ay, ay, ay. So I'm imagining you being a teacher and being this person you are in front of the camera, but in a softer version.
oh, absolutely. When I was um so your personal pursuits when you're a teacher are in the not the back seat. It's a minivan. It's the seat all the way in the back. Is where your personal pursuits belong. And I know that's why a lot of people are conflicted with teaching, because you have people that don't do that. They don't put themselves that far back. But when you're working with young people, you have to prioritize them always, every day. And then so they're in the front seat, and then the parents are in the first back seat, and then you're in the back seat, because that's your job, to give of yourself and to care so deeply about everything. And now I can kind of modify it. One thing I don't like is some comics will say, I don't do this for the audience. No, I totally do this for the audience. I mean, like, who's a rock star for no clapping? You know what I mean? You want to do it,
Yeah, yeah.
for them. Um, but it alternates. Like sometimes I'll worry I'm getting too political, and I'll be like, oh, the audience won't like that. But then I'll be like, but I want to do it, and I'll do it. But it's on every day is different, but it's almost like 50-50, sometimes 60-40.
Uh-huh. Politics is a thing with you. You are all the time about politics. Would you like to be more political in your discourse?
So it's the least I can do to be a little bit political. Like that is at the minimum. I'm trying to work on a campaign among the comedians, which is like, you cannot ignore what is going on in the world altogether. So if you tell 10 jokes, at least one of those jokes has to talk about something going on in the world, because that is your penance. You have to.
You
If you are,
exist.
yes, if you are given a forum, you have to acknowledge what is going on, right? Would I love to be more political? Yes, but I understand that you get more flies with honey than vinegar, and politics is vinagre. Like politics is hard. So what happens is when I want to get really political, it takes me months to write that joke. because it'll be an idea like on a post-it on the wall. And I have like close friends that I'll be like, hey, I want to talk about this on stage. And one of them will be like, absolutely not. You know, like one of them will be like, no, you're never going to make that work. And then other people will be like, I want to hear more, but you better work really hard for this. So it becomes me trying to wrap or unwrap politics in a way that it reminds me so much of teaching, where it's like if I told a student, stop the way you do that, because you're doing it wrong and you need to do it better, you would get nowhere. If you continually say, I love what you're doing, let me show you how we can be doing better, maybe, or there's different ways. Do you want to try these different ways with me? That's how you approach politics. So it's like, I'm not going to get on stage and scream, ACAB, free Palestine, but I'm going to get there. And it's going to be a lovely time, and you're going to learn a little bit when we get there. And that's those jokes. It's like those lesson plans. They take a long time to work on. And I think that's the problem that people have in comedy, is that they want to talk about hot button issues right away. Hey, I just met you, but how do you feel about abortion? That's not, don't do that.
Yeah. No, I imagine that you can, life is somehow circular, right? In general, and history it works in the same way. So I imagine that a well elaborated joke about left and right problems continues being the same as 100 years ago. In fact, there was a pandemic 100 years ago, and then economy went down, and it's kind of the same cycle, right?
Absolutely.
So you can prepare a joke that can work in all these contexts, or not.
Absolutely. And so I think the biggest mistake someone can make right now is to act like that never happened, like the last year and everything didn't happen. That's a mistake. But now what you're doing is you're testing how much you can talk about it. Can you talk about it a little bit? Can you talk about it a little bit more? Can you maybe say we should have done it better? Maybe you can. Can you? So it's and you also understand your audiences. If I was in a club, like, in the West Village doing a show, and it's people who are drunk and they're tourists, I'm probably not going to go fully into a very political topic. I might do the end of a joke will get political, and by that point I've already had them laughing, so I tricked them. They're like, oh, now I laughed at her joke about socialism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but when I go to some place, I used to love performing in Cambridge. If you perform in Cambridge, you can say the most wildly political thing, and everybody is like, tell me more, because it's Cambridge, like that's what they look for. They may not agree with you, but they're eager to hear more.
They want to use their brains.
Yes. So that's, I think, one of the things that I wish we had more in New York, because New York, a lot of the establishments are geared towards tourists. So they're not even geared towards New Yorkers. The big clubs, they're not looking to get your average people from the Brooklyn and stuff. They're trying to get people who are visiting. So now you're looking at more of it's hard to get political, because now you have people from all over the world. You don't know what their So then that's why you do relationship jokes.
Yeah, they're probably Russian.
They could be from all over.
Wow. Okay, so our time is expiring. Bye. Now, tell me. I want to take an idea you had about May 4th. I can totally see you as Princess Leia wearing this red thing.
Next year.
Next year. Yeah, you need to have guests dress up as the different characters. And
I'm really into this idea. I think that's a great idea. We can have Yoda, all of them.
It's opens so many possibilities. Oh my god. Okay, so what Zilla eats every day at this time of the day for dinner?
What do you mean? What do you
prepare? What do you want to have for dinner today? What's your ideal dinner time
Oh my goodness.
experience?
So my ideal dinner dining experience is a little bit about the quality of the food and more about the quality of the company, because I think good meals are also based on company and who you share, who you break bread with. So I would say my mom's pollo guisado and just white rice and a simple salad on the side. And just because I would get to talk to her about, and help cook. Also tostones. I love plantains.
Mm.
Absolutely top to bottom. So that would be on there. But I don't really make those foods as much because now that I'm working so much, it's, that's what's cool about those type of meals is that it's a time investment. From like 4 until 7,
Yeah.
you're going to be cooking and hanging out and drinking and, talking a little bit of gossip or whatever it is. And so that I think would be the perfect meal. I haven't had one of those in a while because of the pandemic. You don't have that sharing experience of cooking as much.
So, what would you cook tonight?
What will I cook tonight? I'm probably I have to look at my for full disclosure, this is how small my apartment is. I'm looking in the kitchen right now.
That's great. Let's imagine it's like 40 feet away.
It's not, but what will I eat tonight? Oh my God, I went to go pick my own kale like a little influencer.
That's
Like a little
awesome.
Instagram influencer. So I would have a kale salad and probably I had chicken thighs that I put some sofrito on. They've been marinating for like 2 or 3 days. So I put them in the oven. So chicken thighs and kale is what we're having.
Oh my God, my kid.
Oh, he's adorable and wonderful. You never have to.
Thank you. He's growing pretty well. Discovering the pleasures of empanadas lately.
Oh my goodness, top of the pops empanadas. I like to do my empanadas on a Monday and then I make a bunch of them so that I can eat them throughout the week.
You're an experienced family person. Oh my God. This has been really fun, Zilla. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking me such meaningful questions and having me. I had a blast. And I know I said this earlier, but I mean it. I 100% believe in everything that you're going after with New Latin Wave. And I think it is so important. And I love what you're doing as far as bringing artists together and curating things. And it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I hope to work again with you in the future.
Oh, thank you. It is really good to hear that kind of stuff. Thank you. It warms my heart.
As it should. ¡Aplauso!
¡Que venga la modelo! ¿Dónde está el chacal?
Oh my goodness. Thank you again.
Thank you.